Welcome back. My name is Todd. I'm your host of The Laundry List. Hope you guys had a good week. Charles, Blake, how you guys doing?
Todd, thanks for asking. Doing all right today?
You guys had a good day? Charles?
Great day.
Yeah? Blake?
Great day.
Good. Yeah. When Blake says that, I think he's people-pleasing and he's full of shit. But I tend to believe him today. We got a very special guest today. We're really excited. A good friend of mine. I've known this guy for, Mark, how long have I known you? 20-some years?
20 plus, yeah, 20 plus
20-something years. I hired him, actually. I owned a sports nutrition company back in the 90s, and I hired him to do promotion and promote our sports nutrition line called Human Development Technologies. And Mark, I'll give you a quick bio on Mark. He's an American collegiate champion wrestler. He's a retired mixed martial artist. And during his MMA career, he was regarded by many as the best fighter in the world. And he's a two-time UFC heavyweight champion and a Pride FC competitor. He also had a documentary. Was that on Showtime, Mark?
HBO ended up carrying
and it was called The Smashing Machine, which I've seen several times. And it's like, for me, Rocky. When I go watch that show, I want to go out and do 20 push-ups and go beat up my cat or something.
That's about
really
right.
The Smashing Machine.
Yeah, toughest man in the world. And for those of you who know Mark, the toughest man on the planet is really the biggest teddy bear on the planet. I mean, he is. There couldn't be a nicer, more gentle soul that I know of than you. And every time I see you, put a smile on my face. And we've developed a new relationship over the last couple of years, one that's pretty vulnerable and open. And I think we've helped each other heal from a lot of our childhood wounds. And that's really what our show's about. I'd like Charles to read the laundry list because the name of the podcast is The Laundry List. So, why don't we start off, Charles, by reading the laundry list and what it is, and then we'll start getting into it.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. So for those listening, if you can identify with any one of these traits, take a little checklist here. You're tuning into the right place if you can identify with some of these things. And the first one is that we became isolated and afraid of people and authority figures. Number 2 is we became approval seekers and lost our identity in the process. 3, we're frightened by angry people and any personal criticism. 4, we either became alcoholics, marry them, or both, or find another compulsive personality, such as a workaholic, to fulfill our sick abandonment needs. 5, we live life from the viewpoint of victims, and we were attracted by that weakness in our love and friendship relationships. Number 6, we had an overdeveloped sense of responsibility, and it was easier for us to be concerned with others rather than ourselves. And this enables us not to look too closely at our own faults. Number 7, we get guilt feelings when we stand up for ourselves instead of giving in to others. Number 8, we became addicted to excitement. And you guys identify with that. Number 9, we confuse love and pity and tend to love people we can pity and also rescue. Number 10, we stuffed our feelings from our traumatic childhoods and lost the ability to feel or express our feelings because it hurt so much. That's a form of denial. Number 11, we judge ourselves harshly and have a very low sense of self-esteem. Number 12, we are dependent personalities who are terrified of abandonment and will do anything to hold on to a relationship in order to not experience that painful abandonment feeling, which we receive from living with sick people who were never there for us emotionally. Number 13, alcoholism is a family disease, and when we became para-alcoholics and took on the characteristics of that disease, even though we did not pick up a drink. I think that's an important thing here too, right? This is not about alcoholism, but we certainly can demonstrate some of those traits. And para-alcoholics are reactors rather than actors.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Every time I hear that, it gives me some goosebumps. And I know, Mark, we've talked about this, and I remember when I talked to you about this new recovery I was doing, and you started reading the laundry list, and it's amazing how we get emotional when we read the laundry list for that first time. And maybe you can give us a little bit of color on what was your childhood like, what was it like during the marriage, and what's it like now, and how are you finding yourself for the first time in your life? How are you finding the true Mark and who you want to be in this life?
Well, hey, first I want to just say thank you, Todd. I appreciate realistically, you gave me what I feel is like another lease on my life. I didn't realize I didn't realize that just recovery from drugs and alcohol it stopped short from what I'm experiencing now in my life. And, the sense of freedom that I have now is, looking at stuff that I never could understand it. I just didn't understand why I did the things I did in my life and why I sought out relationships with the people that I sought them out with. I grew up in, what I literally, coming into this program, I would identify my family life before this program. Like, I had a pretty normal childhood. My childhood was good. And
right.
After you dig into the program a little bit, you're like,
holy
all
shit.
right, hang on, time out. I need to make some adjustments from my perception, because it allows me to dig deeper into myself emotionally, dig deeper into the truth of my own denial.
Right.
And
I think a lot of us have that.
Nobody wants to admit. I said we're men, especially. We have this machismo and this bravado. We're supposed to not have. My childhood was good. I defended myself against all bullies, and I did. I was 10-time high school champ and 3-time sandbox champ. We want to hold on to these ideas, and
right.
for me, it just wasn't a reality. I had to go back and say, okay, I'm the youngest of 5 kids. For me, the easiest thing to do was to people please. And I still get, we had talked about it before, Todd, where, we talked about my word.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah.
The 4 agreements,
Yeah.
your word is most important.
And I just said, my whole life, I know I didn't play a team sport. I know I wrestled and played individual sports because I just didn't want the accountability. I didn't want anybody to call me on my shit, right? If I was just myself, I could handle it, and the crazy part is, I was in a marriage or a relationship for 23 years, just like
me.
Yeah. And, I remember 10 years ago crying to a therapist that I didn't know how to get out of it.
Right.
Like literally, like breaking down on, like sitting there and going, I don't know what to do. I just don't know how to get out of this. And, it's really a miracle. I look at it for myself. In order for me to succeed in what I'm doing now, obviously I had to be sober, but the work that I'm doing now has depth that it's my origin story, right?
Right. Yeah, and when we read those laundry list traits, one that jumped out at me, and you and I have talked about it, is we get guilt feelings when we stand up for ourselves.
Absolutely.
How many times in that 23-year marriage and relationship, and mine too, did I start getting guilt feelings when I started to speak what I really wanted to say?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And then they come down with you on the hammer even more, and then you feel worse. And then by the end of it, you're apologizing for saying something that you wanted to say in the first place, but they came down on you so hard, you're like, oh, I shouldn't have brought that up. I'm so sorry. And you're apologizing for shit you didn't even, you didn't even know what you did.
Yeah, absolutely. And
just because we have that feeling of that hurt child that cannot stand up for himself.
Oh, it's incredible. And when I really think about what I did for a living, fighting, it was probably that, protecting that hurt child.
Right.
Yeah. Because I can grab a hold of somebody and I could beat the fuck out of them, right?
Right.
But I couldn't sit there and have an emotional conversation with somebody because I just cowered.
Yeah, I remember you said something in the Smashing Machine, like, I'm going to beat the shit out of him before he has a chance to beat the shit out of me. Like, you're going to take care of business before he has a chance. But when an angry woman is yelling at us, it's a different story, isn't it?
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely. And you know what? The part which is really fucking hard, man, is admitting that. I mean, like, literally, like getting down to the core of, like, what my experience is, what my human experience was. And just really difficult, because people viewed me at one point, as the baddest dude on the planet.
Right.
And I go home and I have, a woman verbally abuse me.
Right. And I had that same experience. And the hard part is watching the kids. I have two boys. You have one boy, and watching our kids see that. And like, wait, I thought Dad was supposed to be this strong, powerful man that protects the family and can stand up for himself. But yet he's getting berated and belittled and criticized by Mom, and he can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And all he can do is dance and people please to get her to stop. Right?
Yeah, it's, unfortunately, like, there's so many moments where I can look back now and just like, why, look, oh, man, I just wish I would have stood up, or wish I would have did this, I wish I would have did that. And, I've said it to you, now the work that I'm doing is to clear a path, to go, hey, listen, you have, for me personally, I've had to deal with this. And unfortunately, I passed that on to my son. And I've said it before, I want to break this cycle.
Right.
I don't want to continue to pass it along because even, we've talked about it, your parents do the best they can.
Right.
My parents absolutely 100% did the best they possibly could, and I can look at it like that. And I can look at it says in the book, like I can look at my parents as the instruments of my existence.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't have to look at them like godlike figures anymore. They're the instruments of my existence. I love them. And
everything they said and told you and exhibited in front of you is not the gospel. It's not the truth.
No.
They did, like you said, they did what they knew. Mm-hmm. But we are learning in adulthood through all of our different recovery programs and therapy. We are learning how to become our true selves and what we want in our lives. And it's definitely not, what was modeled for us as a kid. So talk a little bit about, how hard that must have been to come out of, being the MMA, UFC champion of the world, being on TV, selling out 50,000, 100,000 person arena, to then being done with all that, being in a relationship that you were not happy in, and not feeling great about yourself. Like, talk about like what that looked like.
Oh gosh, part of, like I just had said, I just didn't know how to get out of it. I just thought that it was just my destiny to endure the emotional pain. I'd look at it like, I did do some bad things. I've been like, when I would get, drinking and she would get drinking, we would get physical altercations. We would fight each other, and I'd figure like, man, okay, dudes don't do that, man. So maybe this is my penance. This is my, what I'm supposed to endure this. I'm just supposed to this is me. This is my life. This is what God has in store for me. And I'm just supposed to endure it to the end of the days.
Right.
And we'll put it this way, I drank, isolated, drank, was, to the point where.
So a lot of self-pity.
Oh man,
a
ton of self-pity.
A lot of depression.
Oh yeah. And so part of it was, even though that I was trying to, be a father to my son, I hid behind, drinking, and I hid behind working and, being gone. And, one day, literally, my son just comes up to me. He's just like, Dad, I get emotional when I talk about it, but, just like, can you stop drinking? And I've said it before. I thought it was going to be like another empty promise. I said, sure. Like, okay. Wait, a couple days goes by and then start drinking again. And, it's just kind of one thing followed another. And, all of a sudden it's like I got 1 month of sobriety, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, and coming up on 4 years.
Yeah, that's amazing.
4,
Yeah, 4 years. And I know for me as a father of two boys, there's nothing worse than disappointing my kids.
Yeah.
And really shaming myself. Like, how could I have done that? But again, what was modeled for me, I modeled a lot of that for my boys. And like you said, I'm here to change that.
Yeah. I mean, part of this in doing this and talking about it openly is, what I discovered from the documentary is it turned the light on for a lot of people, and unwittingly I didn't know it was going to do this. And still to this day, I get people that'll look me up and they'll say, hey, I saw your documentary, and, my dad, my uncle, my brother, it helped me deal with, because they're looking at somebody that they're going, man, this is the toughest dude in the world, and alcohol and drugs took him down. Wow, and so I know through the process of me healing, and me talking about it, it gives other people an opportunity to break the cycle.
Right.
Because right now, if I'm not doing this, I'm just passing the disease on to my son, and he's going to pass it on to his kids, and his kids are going to pass it on to their kids, and
right.
And it's just one where it's like, he deserves better than that.
Right. So you share openly with him and give him and be vulnerable with him.
Yeah. It's and it's funny. Like I had this, like, I'm not gonna cry in front of my son. So for years and years and years, he never saw me crying. In the last 3 years, I probably cried more than I have in the last, in a lifetime. Realistically, because I'm healing. I'm healing, right. and part of that, I don't think I showed up for a couple of weeks without bawling. It's just like.
And I love seeing that, by the way. I love seeing that, because when I see the tears and I see them flowing down, I know that you're getting to the root.
Yeah,
you're getting to it, and you're making peace with your hurt little boy that just wanted love, and he wanted to feel safe.
That's it.
He wanted just to feel like he's part of this human race, and we didn't get that, right? So, I commend you, and you're certainly brave for taking the plunge and into the journey of recovery and finding your true self. The other trait we talk about is addicted to excitement. Yeah. And I can't imagine what it's like. And, guys like you and Dave and other friends of ours that have sold out arenas like, 50, 100,000 person arenas. I can't imagine that adrenaline walking out there.
It's like me describing it, the closest thing that I can get, like a description. So, walking in the arena, you have, like, I would have the senses where I could smell like my opponent that's like 30 feet away from me. I'm not exaggerating, man.
Like a tiger.
I would literally, like, you can smell, because there's like I was just at the gym sweat, and then there's this pungent smell of like nervousness. It creates a different smell, and I could like smell that and be like, I can like smell it across the ring. And then I had this obsession with like making him bleed. Like, because you could smell the iron in the blood, and it's like that smell, it'd be like, oh man, Yeah. So going back to real life, that's, it's one of those things where, right. The transition.
And when you came out, I've watched many of your fights. When you came out.
Oh, I was,
you weren't playing. Like, you wanted it to be one round and you're done.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I can look at myself even to this day, and it's a completely different person. Like, I can look at it and I can see, like, my eyes are different and my temperament, and it's just and I look at it and I know that I clicked the switch back then, and that, once I was out of the ring, it was just something, it was back to me.
Right.
But man, it sets a precedent for everything that follows.
And for me, I played competitive tennis growing up, and Blake played competitive golf, and Charles is a competitive softball player today, and it's like, how do we replace some of those feelings and adrenaline? And I know for me, like, I got addicted to energy drinks and testosterone, and I had a stroke 6 months ago from all that, and it's like, how do we replace that feeling? Because it's almost like I try to recreate that feeling all the time in my life. And it gave me a stroke. So I think God was telling me, okay, enough of that. You got to find another way to get pleasure out of life, right?
Hey, Mark, I mean, I know for me, with being a competitive golfer, and I obviously played golf at a high level, but not anywhere near the level that you fought at. But for me, because of my, just family dysfunction, and I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are, is, did you lose your identity in the process of being a fighter? Because I lost my identity as a golfer. Like, I was a golfer. That's all I was. If I played bad, I was worthless to the world. If I played great, I was the greatest person in the world. And I'd love to kind of hear you expand on, like,
it's one of the hardest things in the world I've had, for two reasons. Because my two things, my people pleasing.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't know what I really wanted. I didn't know who I really was because I just said yes to fucking so many things that, people would go like simple things like, what do you want to eat? Oh, I don't know. Because I've just said yes for so long, right? And my identity as a fighter.
Yeah, like, are you okay with sushi? Yes.
Oh, yes. Yeah, even though fucking sushi, I've gotten the sickest I've ever got in my life from it, right?
Yeah.
So it's been this slow process of figuring out, like, who I am. And it's really interesting because, I've always known I've been a sensitive dude, right? Kind of like, but in a way where it's compassion, man. And it's compassion in a way that I could sit and listen to somebody and they can feel that. They can feel my empathy or my compassion for them. And it's, I look at it like it's one of my better qualities, but it's taken forever for me to get there.
Did you hate fighting at the end?
Oh gosh, man, I despised it.
And
despised it. It took me, you know what? It took me over probably about almost 10 years before I watched the UFC.
Yeah.
People go like, oh, you following this, following that? And I would just go, no. Like I haven't, because I couldn't watch it with enjoyment.
We all just went to a fight together, and the first question I asked Mark was when he saw the ring, like, do you miss this? And
Yeah.
you're like, actually, no, I don't at all.
Yeah.
I don't. Seeing it reminds me that I don't want to be there. And that kind of similar question to what Blake asked. So the point, what we try to accomplish here is identifying where this stuff occurred early on, where those underlying roots are that we're unconscious about.
Yeah, and I want to circle back to that because I know Mark has mentioned, just like me, for me, I was trying to please my dad in tennis. And if I pleased my dad, I felt like, okay, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay. He gives me a that boy, I feel okay. And I know for you were trying to please your mom, and she could never be pleased, No. So why don't you talk a little bit about that and like how you would try to get her to give you validation and approval.
Gosh. And when it started.
Yeah,
right? I'm assuming your parents were probably athletes or competitive, right?
My mom was
The national championship story.
Yeah, God, man, that's like one of it. Yeah, I've told Blake this. It took me. I'll tell you a quick story. So it took me to my senior year to win an NCAA championship, which is just it was such
the pinnacle.
Oh man, it was everything I had tried for. I had put so much pressure on myself because of what my mom would always look at me and go, like, I won a state championship in high school in Ohio, and she would look at me and go like, well, okay, that's really good. You probably should have won one last year too. And it's
There
like
it
that
is.
type of thing. It's
There
like,
it is.
oh, Jesus.
Yeah,
Christ.
like
It's
really?
It's
Why
like,
did it go 4 rounds?
yeah. And so,
But now we can joke about it. But
oh,
back
totally,
then,
man.
it is
So
devastating.
Unbelievable.
To a young teenager, it's devastating, right?
Unbelievable. And I didn't realize until, like when I was, let me just back up a little bit. So in my NCAA championship, I didn't win it to my senior year. Before my senior year, I had never won a single match at the NCAA tournament. I was 0 wins and 4 losses. My senior year, I'm seated 4th in the country, and I just am like sick to my stomach before the event because my mom's out, my dad's out for the 4th time. And so finally I get pissed the first match, and that was the whole thing. I never won a match in the first round, never. And so I make it to the finals, win the finals. I sat on the mat, and I had, and this is totally serious, I had like 10 minutes of the most peaceful moment of my entire life. I still look at it and I can
felt
still,
like you were
oh
okay.
my God, man.
For a minute, you were okay.
It was like
Mom and Dad are finally happy with
Yep,
it.
yep. And it was
Mom and
this
Dad are happy.
completely
You didn't feel any shame.
no,
yeah.
man. And I still look at it to this day where I just sat there in peace. And it was the most peaceful, tranquil moment. I mean, I'll start crying if I talk about it because it's...
That's okay.
I've never,
We encourage tears on this podcast.
So I've never experienced anything like that. And the second that I get with my mom and dad, because they're in the stand, so I'm sitting there, nobody's bothering me, and then I get with my parents, and it's that, my mom go, oh my God, I'm so happy for you, and I'm waiting, and it's, well, you probably should have won last year and the year before, and don't you see like now that you could have done it all along,
right?
And it's just this, and immediately it's this like just my heart drops, and it's this feeling of like, fuck, you know, like here it goes again, man. Just like, fuck, man. And, you know, I knew at that point that my mom wanted me to do an Olympic cycle. It was another 4-year commitment of training your ass off. And there's no money in wrestling. So it was another 4-year commitment of poverty. And, you know, I was willing to do it because I enjoyed it until a point. Like you said, like it got to a point where at the end I just fucking hated it.
Yeah.
I hated it, man.
It's
it
like
was
depressing. It's like you just go and it's like just monotonous, and you're like, just get me through this.
It was fuck. You know what? In the crazy part is, it took me to like about 4 or 5 years ago. I volunteered to teach wrestling up at Horizon. They had this summer program, and I forgot how much I actually enjoyed it. Yeah. Like I honestly forgot. Like I actually had joy because it was just
all the pressure was off.
Oh man, yeah.
All the pressure was off, and you were trying to be of service and just give the skills that you know.
And you know what? I didn't have the language to describe it, right?
Right.
Because that's the deep part of it, right? The deep part of it is that there's no pressure on it. It's something that originally I loved, and it just got poisoned. You know, I got poisoned by all the stuff that I feed, you know, that was fed to me. You know,
and I know we're running out of time here, but can you talk a little bit about how the new relationship that you're in and how different it is from any other relationship you've been in, and how you are starting to act your true self in this relationship, and a little bit of that experience?
So the relationship, first off, was unintentional. I didn't go out looking to get into a relationship. Mm-hmm. It was one where, you know, I knew that I felt like I was still far away from being emotionally, like on solid ground, where I could like stand up for myself, where I can create a boundary, where I could, you know, say, hey, no, enough, you know, no, I don't want to do that, you know, and, you know, I get into this relationship, and the first couple of months, it was so funny because we talked about it now. She would sleep upstairs and I would sleep downstairs because she was going through her own stuff. Mm-hmm. And it was this, I was so afraid she would find out like who I really was. Right. I was like, fuck, man, she finds out that I'm this, and this, and this. She's done. There's no freaking way she's going to want anything to do with it.
So you need to hide it a little bit longer.
Oh God, man. Yeah. I was like hiding it. And then the whole, so we ran a place in Big Bear last Christmas. And she sleeps downstairs, I sleep upstairs, and we talk about it now. It took to a point where we sat down and had like a heart-to-heart conversation. And I said, hey, listen, here's what I've been through. Here's what I'm willing to do. Here's who I am. And I want to build this with you. I want to build this. And, you know, I told her, I said, there's nothing we can't accomplish if we're willing to communicate, if we're willing to actually sit down and be truthful emotionally. And I've said this here, and I said, it's my little thing about like, I'm not allowing anybody to take me emotionally hostage. Right. You know, I'm not allowing, so with her, it's boundaries. You know, it's like saying, hey, listen, you know, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I was never willing to do that. I was never willing to stand up for myself.
How does it feel to stand up for yourself?
Oh,
what's the feeling like?
Sometimes it's scary. So I swear it. Sometimes it's like, well, because I'm so afraid that if I stand up for myself, she's going to leave.
Right.
Super scary.
Yeah, super scary. Right.
But practice makes perfect, right? I mean, you do it enough, you're like, that kind of feels good. And you know what? If she leaves, she leaves.
She leaves. I'm going to be okay regardless.
You're going to be okay.
Yeah. And it's that feeling of like, okay, you know what? It is.
It's empowering.
Yeah, it's a whole different dynamic. It's again, it's like that moment of freedom, you know, right. where I feel, you know, I told her the other day, I said, you know, I've never, ever in my life felt these feelings. Because I've never had this before. I've never had the ability to say what I need to say, to draw a boundary, to do what I need to do to be able to have a healthy relationship. I never knew what that looked like.
Right.
You know, and I'm still working on it. It's a work in progress, right?
We're all still trying to figure it out.
I wouldn't be here. Yeah. You know, and it's like, you know, I never ever thought I'd be talking with dudes about like my feelings, right?
Right.
Like,
Right. Yeah. You want to talk about the new movie coming out, right? You know,
Yeah,
and what The Rock's going to play, Mark Kerr, you know, it's like, you know, and you know, we're talking. And we're talking about, you know, how we like hug the pillow and say,
Yeah,
you know,
oh my God,
mantras.
man.
I love you, Todd. I love you,
yeah.
Todd. You know?
Oh man, you know.
But you know, it's infectious, and
Oh, it
we're
is.
inspiring other men. And I can't tell you how many men, these two at the table.
Yeah.
You know, I've passed on to what was passed on to me, and we're all going to be passing on to many, many more men that want more freedom instead of hiding under the persona of being this tough guy that's rich and powerful and whatever, and get really to the root cause of like, hey, I'm a vulnerable little scared little boy, and I want to get better, and I want to get confident, and I want to find who I really am, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it is, you know, it's amazing because she signed up for the journey too. You know, she's like, you know, this has infected her, you know, in the positive way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she sees what's going on with me, and she's like, hey, I want some of that.
Yeah.
You know, I want some of that because she has her origin story too.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, and my wife's been doing ACA you know, all different recovery journeys with me, and she loves it too. And it's like it brings us closer together.
Absolutely,
it makes us more intimate and more loving, and have more respect for each other.
And that's the you know, the foundation of where we are right now. You know, it's amazing. It just really is. And you know, again, I want to thank Charles and Blake and, you know, and Todd. You've just been instrumental through the whole process. And just, you know, I look at it serendipitous. You know, it's this, you know, chance meeting that I meet you this far down the road, and you had already dug your teeth into it and said, okay, you know, this is the journey I'm taking. And hey, by the way, you want to come along? You know, and
there's no accidents in this life.
No, there's not.
Everything happens for a reason. And I'm really blessed and honored to know you, love you, and be your friend. And we're here with Mark Kerr. We're the Laundry List. Mark, we're going to have you back on here.
Please.
We'll check in with you probably in 6 months to a year. Mark's got an exciting career ahead of him. I know he was, you know, world champion in UFC, but he's got a new career coming out, and we're going to hear about that next time we have him on. So we're the Laundry List, Blake, Charles, and Todd, and we will see you next week.